Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is David Price. I'm a co-founder at RedwoodJS. If you haven't heard of Redwood, I'm hoping you have. It's a full stack framework, open source, and I think my tagline of the week for Redwood is tired of all that boilerplate and config from that wonderful starter package you began with so many moons ago. You should try Redwood. We have a lot that's going on in the Redwood verse, and a couple things that happened last month is, if you hadn't heard, we did a showcase demo highlighting over 20 different products and startups that are using Redwood. Those demos are available now on our YouTube channel, so you can go through all of them. And one of the big announcements is Redwood is more than production ready. By my count, as of last week, the Redwood startups that I know of have raised just shy of $70 million in funding. It's not that every company needs to fund, but it's a great sign of viability and production readiness of Redwood. And frankly, it's just a lot of really cool founders and companies that it's been fun to work with. We made a couple other announcements about Redwood at that time. One is for the next epoch of Redwood, codenamed Bighorn. We name our epochs after United States national forests. So Arapaho was our first epoch. Bighorn is our next one. We're going all in on React Server components. There's a blog post from Tom about that. There's a lot of goodness we're looking forward to when we take a first class conventions golden path with generators framework and add something like React Server components to it. Get excited. There's a lot to come. And we also announced that a conference is coming up, which is going to be our first in-person conference in September. And it'll be the first time we get to have this amazing community and ecosystem get together. So we've got founders and developers that'll be coming, and open source contributors, the core team. And then also we have this wonderful ecosystem of integration partners that we as a core team get to work with almost every day, definitely weekly. There's over 20, I think it's over 30 partners that we work with to make Redwood hum. And so we love these companies and all the individuals and teams that are these partners. And we get to talk a lot about them a lot, but we don't get to show them and introduce them to the community as much as we wanted to. So we thought, well, wouldn't it be fun if we just had them come and unabashedly pitch and hawk their wares and their services so that you as a community would get a chance to know what else you can do with these libraries and tools and the services you might need as you scale. So all that said, welcome to the first of the RedwoodJS partner pitches events. We'll do one next month and the month after as well. We've got 5 great pitches for you today, but first I want to introduce our panelists, because what good is a pitch if you don't have anyone to react to it? So first up, we have Amy. Amy is here. She's on the core team at Redwood. Amy, good to see you. And Amy, as a core team contributor, what are you looking forward to from the pitches today?
I'm looking forward to all the awesomeness, how to integrate Redwood with all these wonderful services and just making my life easier.
They do make our lives easier. That's true. I'm looking forward to people knowing more about that. And Robin from Statapillar. So you are building your startup using Redwood, and there might be a few things you're looking for today, but what are you most interested in learning about today during these pitches?
Yeah, I think the things I'm most looking for are developer experience and ease of integration.
Yes, and I think you're going to be impressed. Elena from Base Case VC. So Elena is an investor. I've gotten to meet in person. It's a pleasure to have you join us today. So Elena, a little different angle on taking pitches today. What are you interested? What are you looking for today?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm an investor, also a developer. So I'm an investor in some dev tool companies like Supabase, Snaplet, also part of the RedwoodJS family, Resend, which is a company behind React Email. And I'm looking for, I think, developer experience. I agree with that. And companies that are going to like take us into the next decade of software development. Obviously, things are changing with AI. And I want to see like people who are thinking about the way that software is going to be built in like 5 or 10 years and helping us get there.
All right, very good. Well, thank you. So we'll have you all step off for now. We've got a first pitch coming up, and then you'll get a chance afterward to say a few things in response. So thank you. We'll see you again in just a second. And so first up from our pitches here is Paul from a company that everyone has heard from, Stripe. Paul, it's always a pleasure to have you. I'm going to step out of your way and let you take it from here.
All right. Thank you, David. And hello, everyone. Okay, if you could just, I need to share my screen, David. So if you could just pitch that up in StreamYard. There we go. And if I click slideshow, you should be able to see things. All right. So Stripe and Redwood provider pitch. So first of all, hello, my name is Paul. I'm a developer advocate at Stripe, and I'm based in Amsterdam, where I'm right now. But more importantly, I want to tell you a little bit more about Stripe. And I particularly want to tell you about, just in case you don't know, like what is Stripe, tell you like why you would want to use Stripe, and more importantly, how you should use Stripe. So let's start with the most important question. And also, this is probably my favorite slide I've ever made, just what? What is Stripe? Stripe is a financial infrastructure company. Now, what that basically means is that we do a ton of stuff in the fintech space, but you probably know us best for our payment processing. Stats and stuff on the left-hand side here, we operate in a ton of countries. But more importantly, if you work with Stripe, that means you can accept payments from pretty much anywhere in the world, which is really cool. Big API, big on software, big on developer experience. Probably heard of us. If not, your credit card certainly has. I think most credit cards in the US and otherwise kind of tend to go for our systems at some point or another, which is pretty cool. But why Stripe? Why would you want to work with us? Well, for starters, a lot of people who are going to be here are like startup founders or people who are working on a startup or building something, obviously with Redwood. And the real drive of the real bonus thing for Stripe is like, why would you try to reinvent the wheel when it comes to payments? So payments is difficult, really difficult. It's hard. If it was easy, Stripe wouldn't exist. And it's always evolving as well. So in this slide, I just show that you're probably familiar with the card networks on the left. But these days, you also have to deal with wallets in the middle, so your Apple Pays and your Google Pays, but also your local payment methods. Like on the right here, I'm in Amsterdam, so Ideal is the payment method that I would choose to use, which is only available in the Netherlands. And we found in research that if you make sure that local payment methods are available to your customers, you get a higher conversion rate, so more money in the bank. Always very useful. Also, Stripe helps you a lot with some of the darker sides of the internet, which is fraud, declines, and disputes. If you've never encountered these before, consider yourself very lucky. I hope you never have to, because the internet has got some very bad people on it, and fraud does happen. And Stripe is very, very good at stopping this from happening. We have something called Radar, which is basically a machine learning powered network which detects if a charge going through your Stripe account is actually like a real charge made by a real customer, or if it's something which should probably be blocked. And so yeah, let's kind of sum it up. What does Stripe do? Stripe basically turns code into money. The whole idea is that leave the financial parts of like accepting payments to Stripe and focus more on something that you should be doing, like saving the world or building your awesome startup on Redwood. But I can almost hear you furiously typing, but Paul, what happens if I live in a country that Stripe does not support? And I would say, yeah, well, you got me there. But oh my God, it's Stripe Atlas with the steel chair. That's right. We have actually thought of this problem. We have something called Stripe Atlas, which is a service that we provide where you can basically, for the low fee of about $500, you can incorporate a company in the state of Delaware, we'll open up a bank account for you, and more importantly, we get you a Stripe account that you can use to build your company. So that's the what and the why, but now more importantly, the how. Like, how do you actually get started using Stripe? Well, once you have your Stripe account, we've opened it up. By far, the easiest way to get started is something called payment links. So you can, as simple as just putting it in a link, as you see at the top here, this is just a link to a website. At the bottom here, we've got the Stripe button, which you can also very easily put into your web page. If you click on that button, you get sent to Stripe's checkout page, which you see here. And this is kind of super customizable. This can be on your own domain as well. It gives all the information your customer needs, but more importantly, it lets you collect stuff like email address or like name on card, and lets them pick the payment method as well they want to use. In this example, for instance, we have like the Cash App or Klarna you can pick from. And all of this is kind of just taken care for you. And again, so you can just focus on what's more important. But this is a Redwood talk, this is a Redwood pitch. So I wouldn't, obviously the best way to integrate with Stripe is using the brand new RedwoodJS Stripe plugin. So this is being developed by a wonderful developer in South Africa named Christine. We've been sponsoring this open source project for a while now. And I'm very happy to say that we're very, very close to a V1 release, which will actually be coming like, I think as early as next week. This is all you need basically to get started on Stripe. You just plug in your API keys into this thing and it just does all the work for you and get you set up with Redwood. So highly recommend you check this out if you haven't already. It's just RedwoodJS-Stripe on GitHub, completely open source. Check out some issues there, create a new issue, maybe contribute if you'd like. And yeah, that is Stripe in a very short nutshell. And I would love to take some questions from our panelists.
Paul, well done. All right, we're bringing up our panelists here. And before we go around and get some responses there, I wanted to mention, I forgot one important thing. We have a fourth panelist, and that's you, our live stream audience. We're watching chat, and if you have any questions or comments, we'll try to highlight some of those if we have time for each response, but then also Paul's sticking around and he could answer your questions after this time is gone. So let's go around. Let's go in reverse order this time. So Elena, what do you think? What do you think about this Stripe thing that Paul's talking about?
Well, I loved your pitch, first of all. I thought great energy. Love the picture of the fighters or whatever. I have a question, which is, I know Stripe has lots of like really big customers, and also, you know, you're pitching to startups and even just individual developers trying to use Stripe to make money on side projects. How do you think about like developer support and like working with very small customers versus very large customers, and like, you know, how do you differentiate there?
Well, so short answer is we don't really differentiate. We kind of treat everyone equally in that respect. We are very much a developers first company. So when it comes to like the support systems that we have, we very much try to go the extra mile. Like, have you ever seen the Stripe API docs? Or I would say, tuning my own horn here, pretty good. We also have a very active Discord server where you can actually go and ask questions to actual Stripe engineers who will then try to help you out. If you just type Stripe developers into Google, you'll probably find the Discord server. It's free for everyone. And while larger users might get like an account manager attached to them, the point is that we try to make sure everyone gets treated equally and gets the same level of attention, particularly when it comes to building or starting off your Stripe integration. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Robin, how about you? Do you think Stripe is something you might use in your product?
I think so. It seemed easy to use. One of the questions I have is, you know, any of this payment processing stuff is a thing that most developers will not have had familiarity with until they've tried. And there's different approaches that all sound like big, scary things, you know, like merchant of record versus credit processing. Could you talk about some of the advantages of Stripe's approach versus the other things in that space?
Well, so the whole point of Stripe is that we kind of abstract that problem away from you. So a lot of like, yes, if you go like for a direct integration with a bank, for instance, you would get something called a merchant account, which lets you do something very similar to Stripe, but then you're on the hook for literally everything. And also compliance you're on the hook for as well. So the point of Stripe is really just this layer of abstraction between your business and the whole financial network that is, to be honest, held together with like spit and wishful thinking at this point. So we kind of help navigate that space so you don't have to worry about it. You obviously could get really deep into this and do it yourself, but I don't know if I recommend that. I mean, if it was easy to do, Stripe wouldn't exist.
Thanks, Paul. And Amy, how about you? So you're a contributor on the Redwood framework. What do you think of this Stripe thing?
Yeah, I love the fact that I don't have to worry about PCI compliance. That's super scary. And the fact that I can hand that off to somebody else is a major win. And the fact that I don't have to worry about, as you mentioned, wallets, all these different payment options that are cropping up. I don't have to update my code. I can offload all of that to Stripe. So the developer experience is absolutely fantastic. And the fact that there is a Redwood plugin coming out is even more exciting.
Yeah, very much. And Paul, there was a question about the Redwood plugin. If you could post a link maybe to the project and how to follow along in chat, that'd be very welcome. Paul, thank you. From the guy who said, I'll find someone else from Stripe to give the pitch. I'm glad that you let me nudge you into it. So welcome. All right.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Oh, it's always a pleasure. Okay. So we've got our next pitch coming up. And it is a pleasure to introduce you to Lauren with an I from the Guild. And he's going to be talking about Hive GraphQL. Lauren, take it away.
Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, hi. I'm happy to today represent the Guild here. So if you are using RedwoodJS, we basically already own your stack because RedwoodJS uses GraphQL CodeGenner and GraphQL Yoga, which are two projects that are maintained and were built from the Guild. And today I'm not here to talk about those two projects. Today I'm here to actually talk about GraphQL Hive. And before we get into what GraphQL Hive actually is, let's talk a bit about GraphQL. So GraphQL can be easy if you're using Redwood, for example. So the easiest setup you could imagine is if you only have like a single team or a single developer, you as the team or the developer own both the GraphQL API and the GraphQL API consumer, so all the clients, and maybe even all the code is in the same monorepository. So in that scenario, like evolving a GraphQL schema is like super simple, and breaking clients does not happen. For example, if you make adjustments to your GraphQL schema, you can immediately update the GraphQL operations that use the GraphQL schema within the same pull request if it's the same Git repository, and then just deploy that to production. However, as your GraphQL schema evolves and you get more clients, and maybe even from those like one front-end app that is tightly coupled to your GraphQL API, you introduce like mobile clients or like external clients, it can get a bit more complex. So if you at some point have like many teams, many products, and many developers, and you also have kind of like GraphQL clients that you don't even own or that belong to different teams, and furthermore, the code is spread across different teams, repositories, or even companies, it becomes suddenly quite hard to make changes to the GraphQL schema without knowing how they will affect those clients. And ideally, what you need to know is who are those clients, what parts of the schema are those clients using, and how can we, with that information, roll out schema changes without breaking the clients. As I said, we cannot use the simple model anymore here. So this is basically what GraphQL Hive is trying to solve, which is a schema registry and a breaking change detection tool. So the first part of GraphQL Hive is the schema registry. So what you do is basically, once you change your GraphQL schema or you have your initial GraphQL schema, you push that to GraphQL Hive with a CLI. You could do that, for example, as part of your continuous deployment pipeline. And then from that, you will get a whole overview over the changes that happened within that schema change. For example, some fields could be added, some fields could be removed, some field type could be changed, and so on. And then you could also link that to your GitHub action, and then it will actually show those changes associated with the commit on GitHub. So now I need to do a small interlude about what is actually a breaking change. And a breaking change in GraphQL can be defined as any change to a schema that would break existing GraphQL operations that are executed. In this example, if we use the bar field from the query type, all the query operations that use the bar field would break. And that is kind of what we want to prevent. So what we can do now is in our CI pipeline, we can use the CLI again to check our schema before publishing it. And then it will give us a full report on whether the schema we're about to publish would be breaking any of those operations or not. And this can again be done with the CLI. And if there's an error, you will get a full report. And obviously, you can also look at the schema check on the Hive UI. And it's also you can also see like a diff of the full schema. And furthermore, this check will be integrated with your GitHub actions. So every time you create a new pull request out of the schema, you get live information on whether this change in your PR would break anything. But that's only one part, because in order to like make reasonable decisions, you also need to know what parts of the schema the clients are using. And this is covered with the usage reporting feature. So what you would actually do on the GraphQL API is use the Hive SDK, which is available in JavaScript, Ruby, Java, or like any language you can imagine. Put it into the GraphQL API, and then the Hive SDK will start pushing information on how the GraphQL schema is used to GraphQL Hive. From that, we can then, on GraphQL Hive, give you very useful information on how your GraphQL schema is used. First of all, we can list you all the requests, how long requests take, which kind of clients are consuming your GraphQL API, and what versions. We can tell you how many operations are there executed, and can also tell you how many of those fail. Basically Google Analytics for your GraphQL API. And then we can also give you like a detailed overview over all the operations that are executed, and give you detailed information on how much % of the traffic is related to that operation, and how likely is that operation to fail. And then also with that information, we can tell you what fields are used by which client. And this information can kind of be used for approaching teams and telling them, hey, you're using this field, but we already deprecated it. Once you want to remove it, and then over time you can observe whether this number goes down, like the usage data. And then if it's like 0 or approaching 0, you can make the decision to actually remove it. So the powerful feature that is combined from the schema registry and the usage reporting is basically conditional breaking changes. And within Hive, you can configure that, for example, if a certain field is not queried for in the last 30 days, or like only 5% of traffic is using that field, it's safe to remove that field, and schema check should not fail if I'm trying or attempting to remove that field within my pull request. So that basically allows us to make adjustments to the schema without make breaking changes to the schema, but based on the actual usage of all the clients that consume our GraphQL API, it's not a breaking change. And yeah, for Hive, so Hive is available in 2 options. First of all, you can self-host it. All of Hive is fully open source, completely free for you to self-host, and you can get started within 5 minutes by only running Docker Compose. And if you want to change something, fix something, or like request something, just open a GitHub issue or GitHub pull request. And then we also have the GraphQL Hive Cloud version. There's a generous free plan for that. We don't charge based on pricing on seats. So also we give you a single sign-on with all plans, so you don't have to pay extra for that. And then also what you will always only pay for is the collected schema usage data and the data retention, which is required for like analytics data and conditional breaking changes. Obviously, we also have like an enterprise plan with SLA and whatever you want, like live support on Slack, you name it. And yeah, that's it. There's obviously more projects we maintain, but today is mostly about Hive. Yeah, thank you.
All right, Lauren, thank you. I mean, we'll ask another time, but what I don't understand is how you're ever going to make money if you don't charge $100 per user for SSO. So we'll talk about that another time. But first up, Robin, you're in the middle. You're in the middle of building and using GraphQL every day, Robin. So what do you think about Hive?
Well, I mean, this looked great. If the question I had for most of the presentation was going to be like, well, am I writing contracts of the queries that are going to be used? But if it's all just auto-detected, then that seems very straightforward. To the extent that you're kind of building a dashboard in a way that people might interpret as, you know, understanding what's happening behind the scenes, is there any like performance metrics that would be associated with the incoming queries that you could use for kind of, you know, fast query optimization or anything like that?
So in general, we can give you information about operation itself in isolation, like this operation, how long does it take? But obviously, like the performance of a GraphQL operation is depending on what kind of data is selected within the GraphQL operation. And for now, we don't like track the resolver execution times for many reasons. First of all, it's like highly implementation dependent. Like it would work different in JavaScript, in Ruby, or whatever language. On the other hand, it's like too much data is also unuseful. What we recommend people is to use for resolver tracing is like to use something like OpenTelemetry and then wrap only those like fields that you're interested in. And maybe in the future we will even like ship a feature that allows you to hook up OpenTelemetry with Hive, and then we can reuse that information and share it with you also on that dashboard.
Amy, what do you think?
Oh man. So my favorite features that you listed were the fact that it will track your schema changes. So if I'm working with a team, you know exactly what changes are being made. And the fact that you also are running queries to see what changes or what queries were made last so that you can make changes safely. Those features are just absolutely fantastic. Well done.
Thank you.
All right. And Elena, how about you? And I'm watching chat. If there's any questions you have, we'll highlight those as well. Elena, go ahead.
Yeah, that's super cool. I have one question, which is like, if I'm a developer like getting started, it seems like it's super easy to get started. You said like less than 5 minutes, but seeing as like you are capturing all this like usage data and analytics, is there anything I need to worry about from like a security perspective, or like where are you storing the data about the usage of the GraphQL queries?
So we don't store any like of the data that is like sent from your server to the client. Like we only care about the GraphQL operation and what fields are selected in there. And that's basically, to some extent, you can say, okay, if you know the GraphQL schema of someone, that is already like a security risk. But what's more often like more security issue is like the actual data. And the actual like payloads, GraphQL execution results never enter Hive. We always only extract like the fields that are used from the operations and only push that data to Hive. So it's pretty secure.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, Lauren. A pleasure. Thank you, panelists. You're all doing a fine job. I appreciate having you here. We're going to come up to our next presentation. If you have questions for Lauren, please ask him in chat. And next up, Mina from Flight Control. Mina, I think this is the first time I've ever done this. Mina, who puts up with most of my annoying questions on direct messages on Slack about Flight Control. I will hand it over to you now. Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much, David, and thanks everyone. It's really glad to be with you here. So Flight Control, what is Flight Control? We are a small startup. We are founded like over a year. We graduated YC last year, and basically we are doing a deployment platform. So deploy to your own AWS, own your infrastructure. This is the whole pitch here. It's get your application deployed to your own infrastructure and own it. It allows you to deploy your application with the same easy and intuitive developer experience we're used to from past, like Heroku, get push to deploy, ability to deploy preview environments, infrastructure as code, so you can easily replicate your deployments to multiple projects if you need to, easy and secure environment variables management, and supports web applications, offline workers, static sites, RDS and Redis, Elasticache. So that's basically what Flight Control is, and that's all. So I thought let's do something different, and let's do actual live demo of how easy to use Flight Control. And to start this, we have a very simple Redwood application here, API, web, simple stuff. It's a to-do application, and the goal is deploy this to Flight Control and see how easy the integration with Redwood is. We have been working with the Redwood team amazing community, and it's really a pleasure to work with the community. So I have cloned the application here, yarn, and install. Let's see how fast we can get to this. I have installed previously, so that's really fast. In order to deploy to flight control, we have worked with the Redwood team, and you have built-in Redwood command. So it's yarn rw setup deploy flight control. That's all you need to do. Run it, let it do the magic. Gets you an error here, which is I have to do this. Run it again. You can see you get immediately, if you do like get def, you will see few changes done to you in order to deploy to your own AWS. Basically, you will see some environment variables added to your application, basically to support having multiple services deployed to the cloud. But that's not everything. If you do like get status here, you will see a new file added here, which is a flightcontrol.json file. And this file includes all your infrastructure configuration. And if we wanted to have a look quickly to see how intuitive and easy this configuration is, you will see that you will have an environment or multiple environments like production, development, staging. You can name them as you need. You choose region. I am from Canada, so I will go here with CA Central 1. You can deploy to any region you want. If you are anywhere in the globe, deploy to your closest region to your users. You choose a branch to deploy from. So for example, branch main here, and then configure your services. So we support Fargate, so this would be the best deployment service for your APIs, because you will get a serverless containers that runs all the time for you. It's managed by ECS, AWS, which allows you to not worry about servers and EC2 or anything. You just, those are running 24/7 for you. If they crashed, you get new instances. You can also add auto scaling options like minimum instances, maximum instances, and we have we have a nice feature here that auto complete for you. So if you want to like minimum instances here, this whole schema, the first line here, allows you to do this magic. It gives you autocomplete and checks and everything. And that's it. You configure your services, you configure your domain here. You can add, for example, I need domain mina.com, mina.ca, whatever. Build command, start command, everything is built inside here. And you will see those two lines here. You will get environment variables shared across your services. So you can easily get one service sharing its own URL to the other, or the database sharing the connection string to the other. This is so powerful, and having it in this setup, we will see in a minute how powerful this setup is. And that's it. Just push this to deploy. So I'm going to do that now. Yeah, I forgot how to. Push, deploy. Now we're ready. We go to create new project. We have, this is the flight control dashboard. So you sign up, and the first thing is create a new project. You choose the project from your GitHub account. So just connect your GitHub account. You get list of all repositories. So this is the repository we're working from. Hit next, and you get to choose which branch to get the deployment from, or you can develop your own your whole environment here from the UI if you want to, but we already did that through a JSON file. So we choose flight control to JSON, and we say it's in the root flight control to JSON. We choose an AWS account to deploy to, hit create, and oops, we should change the name here. And that's all you need to do, and it will create the project for you. This usually takes quite a few minutes, because it's sometimes it actually forgot to add the file. It usually takes few minutes to deploy the whole environment for you. But you can see now we added the file and it gets picked up, get pushed to deploy. This is the whole magic here. We already provisioned another project for you, so you get a chance to see how this works here. So you can see now after a successful deployment, you get database, you get the API, you get the web. Web is a static service, so S3 and CloudFront API, you get a Fargate load balancer in order to arrange the number of instances, and CloudFront in front of them as a CDN. For database, you get RDS as Postgres. As you select, you can choose the version you need. We support all versions from, I think, from version 9 all the way to 15. And from this environment here, you can edit also environment variables. You can add more environment variables if you need. You can click to get the metrics, connection strings. Anything you need is managed from one interface. But that's not all. We're going to demo a very quick thing in order to see the power of this platform. So if you're working with a team and you are working with like open PRs regularly, so I'm going to open a PR to this project and let's see what happens. So I'm going to open PR here. So I added a PR from, oh, no, this is not what I need. So, okay, let's see. I just added a title here, change the title, create a pull request. And if I'm lucky enough, I hope a preview environments actually doesn't seem we have configured this correctly here, but I know why. Going to, let's see if we can do this quickly. Go to the project, and this is the flightcontrol.json. And whoops, yeah, it doesn't seem to pick up the preview environment, but basically the preview environment here is another configuration. So you configure your flightcontrol.json to have a PR equal true, and you have the same copy paste environments or services that you configured. And the power here is because you share the environment variables between your services, you basically get to not to worry about those connection strings or anything. Flight control takes care of all of that for you, and you should get an ephemeral environment, a preview environment, which is a very cost-efficient environment, gives you temporary URLs to test your application, and once you approve, merge the PR or close the PR, these environments get terminated for you. And yeah, that's it. Sorry for the hiccup, but for the time, I think we will we'll stop here.
Mina, you had me at live demo. All right, some quick reactions though. Amy, what do you think?
Yeah, I love the live demo and the fact that you can do all the configuration directly within a JSON file. Did have a quick question for you. I know one of the beautiful things about flight control is you can also have even more control over your data. You're not locked in. So is that just a quick click of a button on the back end? What does that process look like?
You're not logged in with flight control. Easily, you can basically click a button to disconnect flight control and eject, and you manage your infrastructure. Your infrastructure stays in your cloud. We don't delete them or anything. It's in your cloud. You own them, and you continue to manage them on your own. It's your infrastructure. You own it.
Yeah, that's beautiful that you have complete control over that, and you can scale. So you can, for a startup that's just trying to launch quickly, they have the ability to do that. But for a larger enterprise company, they can scale to what they need as well. That's awesome.
And Elena.
Yeah, well, I'm a VC, so I get to ask the question, how do you make money?
So we charge based on usage. So based on your AWS usage, we have different pricing tiers based on this usage. So this is this. So based on the usage of the infrastructure we manage for you, you fall into one of those tiers, and this would be your monthly charge.
And if you're a like hobby user, like for Vercel, I have hobby projects and like I have usage, but it's still free no matter what the usage is. Do you have something similar, or do you still charge individual indie hackers?
No, sure. Individuals are free, and because you deploy to your own AWS, usually we advise hobby users to use free tiers or make use of the 12-month free tier from AWS, which will allow anyone to probably deploy applications, test them, and get through like a good state in 12 months to like actually probably by then they could have a sustainable business if it's possible. Otherwise, you can apply for AWS credits, but from AWS, so from flight control side, it's free always for individuals.
Cool.
Robin, what do you think? Would you consider deploying Statapillar on flight control?
I would. I mean, the syntax of the JSON file was significantly cleaner than CloudFormation YAML files, so it looked very straightforward. And I think when you implement this stuff on your own, it's very easy to accidentally deploy something and then lose it and get billed months later for $2 and not know in AWS where the thing is or how to delete it. Is there like a migration plan that you guys kind of have? Do you have documentation about how to switch over from other solutions?
Sure. So we have a great DevRel team. I think Jeff here is on the audience. So we have documentation here about how to deploy different frameworks and how to get them moving to flight control. Usually, it's an easy process. And we usually also offer support for new customers. We have Discord server available for anyone. They can ask questions. We tend to be so responsive. Also for teams, we offer Slack support for them. So that's also a good option. We are with you on this journey till you are deployed, successful, and happy on AWS.
Thank you all. Or just send Mina a DM. That's what I do. Mina, well done. Thank you. And again, you had me at live demo. All right. So next up, Zachary. I know him as Zach, and I don't play favorites, but if I had another favorite deployment provider, it would be Coherence. Zachary, thank you. I'll leave it to you.
Yeah. Likewise, Redwood is our favorite too. And yeah, thanks to the Redwood team and everybody who's here. Really excited to show you more about Coherence. And I think, to start with, I'm going to show you something that is, in the grand scheme of things, relatively similar to what we just saw with flight control, right? Coherence is also a developer experience layer that helps you build and deploy cloud native applications onto your own cloud account. So Coherence supports AWS, like we saw with flight control. We also support Google Cloud Platform, if you're interested in using Google as well. And I think it's really exciting to see all the innovation happening because, as someone who's been a startup CTO for a long time and deployed a lot of applications over my years, the amount of time and hair I've pulled out solving these problems over and over again is something I'm excited that the next generation won't have to deal with. So yeah, similar, David, if I could get my screen shared, I'm going to jump into a live demo as well. And I'm sure I'll have my own issues with the demo gods as we do it. But, I'm going to start similar to what we saw with flight control. Coherence does have an integration with the Redwood yarn command. So you can do yarn Redwood set up Coherence, just like flight control, and it will inject the correct configuration and code modifications to get you a successful deployment. So I'm sort of skipping the onboarding process and jumping into a deployed application to show you a little bit. And this is also an application deployed on AWS. What we're seeing on the screen here are the different types of environments that Coherence manages. So, in addition to your branch preview type environments, which main is an environment for my main branch, and I can see the AWS deployment of this application right here. I've got a branch preview set up for my Redwood feature branch that I've also deployed. And what I did is change the title of this this page for the homepage. Our demo application is a task management application also. And some of the things that you're seeing on the page that I think are interesting to just note are around Coherent's also managing a production environment, and we're doing that in a different AWS account or Google Cloud project than the rest of these environments. In general, we feel like it's our opportunity to bring best practices to the teams that we work with, who are often small teams that if they were working on their own, even if they did write their own Terraform and get to deploying their applications, they're not able to get to the best practices that AWS and Google and all the other clouds are publishing in their white papers as far as like how you should use these platforms to the fullest. So the normal workflow in Coherence is that teams are working in GitHub and tools like GitHub and Slack. So this is the PR for my my little change to the title that we just looked at. And what you'll see is, the Coherence bot posted the URL we just looked at on this for me. So, when my team pushed to this environment, the PM doesn't have to go to Coherence or anything. It's easy for them to just access the preview environment and do their work. And within each of these environments, you're going to see, as you push code, you're going to see build and deployments, and we're going to link you to AWS appropriately, and pull in the relevant information that we can, but link you to AWS appropriately to find things. You can manage variables here, and so similar to what we just saw, you can have a collection level environment variables that are what we call collection level environment variables that are by default injected into all of these preview environments, and then I can right in the UI really easily override values for particular environments. Like, let's say I have a feature flag that I want to turn on for this environment or something like that. There's an easy way to do that. All these variables ultimately are stored in Cloud Secrets Manager under the hood, and they're mapped correctly to the right environments across the build, deploy, and runtime phases of your application. And so, the idea here is to just give you a nicer developer experience on top of the Secrets Manager product. What I want to show you next is, I think where Coherence is really interesting and something we're really excited about is cloud development environments. So in addition to the branch preview environments and the kind of staging or production environments you might be managing, we have a built-in, similar to a GitHub Codespaces or Gitpod type experience, which are amazing products that we want to encourage the use of all these kinds of tools. A VS Code in the cloud that actually is running, in addition to VS Code and the ability to edit the code, is really running the development server for your application right in it. So this is deployed right on the instance for this VS Code, and I don't have to deploy anything to see these changes reflected. You can see they're already reflected here in this tab. I can do my own personal development, maybe use these for pair programming or something, and then as soon as I get push, which I can do right from here, I would see another build. We'll just do this for fun. I can see another build when we go back to the other screen will be generated, but I wanted to take the opportunity while we were in this environment, not to close that, but to show you the kind of, this is, different than JSON. We chose YAML. This is the configuration it would take to get a simple application deployed on Coherence. And, obviously we have our documentation with, robust examples of different types of applications and how they can be deployed. And, you don't have to do any of this to get started with Redwood because they've been such great partners. The last thing that, I wanted to show as far as the normal workflow, how teams use us is that, this build information here is, available in the Coherence dashboard. And you can see, the data is streaming in as far as this build that we just pushed is running. We're also going to see the status of these deployments reflected here. And if we configure tests, including integration tests like end-to-end, so, using tools like Cypress or Playwright tests, these would show up as check run statuses on the PR. So you could apply things like branch protection rules. And so a common use case is teams run end-to-end integration tests on top of these preview environments after each deploy to make sure that they haven't broken their features. And then we'll also post these build statuses into Slack so that there's an easy way for your team to see as you deploy and deep link you to the right places. And it's easy to see, what did we just deploy when I get this notification. So yeah, I think that is a quick whirl through demo of Coherence. Some other features that people really appreciate. If we go in here, in addition to the workspace, we have another cloud environment called the Toolbox that is a Cloud Shell session just for this environment. And let's say I need to run a REPL and get a shell to run a Prisma command for a manual change for a bug I found or for something that a user requested. I'm able to do that without having to directly access AWS CLI and use tools on my laptop and confuse different environments like production and local or production and development with the credentials and environment variables that I have present. This is going to match the exact configuration for the right database instance for this preview, the right variables for this preview, and let you execute your commands directly in the cloud, right? Nothing to install and audited and logged and managed by Coherence on your behalf. And yeah, the last thing I would say is we spend a lot of time on things like database seeding, database migration, database snapshot loading, capabilities to bring up environments in a usable state. What we found working with teams trying to bring on previews is that the hard part is not just deploying the infrastructure, but is making the environment usable for non-technical stakeholders as it comes up. So yeah, I think happy to talk questions and excited to learn more from the community about what they need from tools like this. There's so much innovation happening. It's a really exciting time.
Yeah, thank you, Zachary. Workspaces, very interesting. Amy,
yeah, we're excited about them.
Amy, over to you.
Yeah, I love the workspaces feature as well as the toolbox. The fact that you can do that without having to go over to the Amazon CLI is pretty great. What would you say is the best way for someone to get started?
So with a Redwood project, they should just type yarn Redwood, set up Coherence. They go to our app, and similar to all these other things, you install a GitHub app in our UI and click a button, and you're off to the races.
That's awesome.
We are also super happy to reach out to us through our links on our documentation or our homepage, and we're super happy to answer questions and be helpful in getting apps migrated as well.
Elena, the VC, do you have any questions, reactions?
I have a question. So it seems like A, a really great user experience, B, very easy to get started, especially for like startups, smaller companies. My question is I'll phrase it maybe two different ways. Like one is what's to stop like a company from starting to use this and then let's say it gets too expensive or something and just saying, okay, actually let's just forego the good developer experience and just use AWS or something. Or maybe another way of phrasing that is what do you find is the actual really critical thing that developers are oh, we have to continue paying for this because this one thing?
We think that the ROI, the value proposition of creating leverage for DevOps teams and platform teams and being able to shift, and infrastructure management to developers while still being within the confines of what the infrastructure team wants to do is so big that teams, they don't want to leave the experience once they have it. And they're able to augment, because we're in your own cloud, they're able to augment as they grow and scale. So we haven't yet found that people are worried about cost as they scale on these kinds of platforms. The most important features are consistent environment management that doesn't require a DevOps team to handhold developers to walk through, right? Even things like CDK and Pulumi generally, even though they're more developer friendly, still require the infrastructure team support for developers to make changes. And our value prop is really that we're able to shift that over and you can get a preview environment running or a new demo environment running for a sales team without a DevOps person being involved.
Got
That's
it.
really
So
the
you
value prop
find,
here.
do you find then that like in most of your customers, it's just like developers and engineers are the user, and like by using this, they don't actually need to build a DevOps or a platform team because they're able to manage it themselves with this?
So they're still going to need a platform and DevOps team as they grow, right? And they need to do customizations on top of the sort of basic resources and environments that we're orchestrating. But they definitely can have a smaller team and a more effective team with our tool.
Cool.
And Robin, you've got a couple solid choices now. What do you think?
Yeah, this looked great. It looks like you guys put serious thought into the user interface and the display of relevant information on, so very clean, good looking interface. And I really liked, yeah, kind of what you were saying about, okay, the developers can kick off an environment here and the product managers can just go find the live link on this main page. The two-sided sword there is like, I'm guessing you also have user-based access control, right? Where a project manager can click on open the link, but they can't go accidentally delete the production database URL environment.
Yes, of
variable.
course. Of course, there are, today there are roles for people that can launch a toolbox or deploy to production, and people that can edit membership and can. We have a lot of fun stuff on our roadmap. Like the best one's like a 2-person role to access prod data, right? Nobody can launch a prod toolbox unless someone else says that it's okay. And advanced features like that are what compliance focused teams need. I spent about 10 years as a health tech CTO, and so I have a very deep-seated place in my heart for questions like that, and we really want to do right by those kinds of teams.
And Zachary, thank you. But I tell you what, you're taking all the fun out of dropping a production database table. So thank you for your time. Really appreciate you. We've got one more coming up here, and that is from Dan, closing us out from Ingest with 2 N's. Dan, thank you. It's a pleasure to see you again. I'll let you take it from here.
Cool. Thanks, David. There we go. All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Dan, co-founder of Ingest. I'm here to close it out. So thank you for hanging around this long. I hope to have some fun at the end right here. There seems to be a common theme today, right now, I'm seeing with the last couple talks about managing infrastructure and how painful it can be, right? And we totally agree with Ingest. We think that it's very painful. I definitely would be continuing that theme, but I'm going to be talking about a little bit more of a specific use case and a different approach to that problem. So at the high level, what is Ingest? Ingest is a developer platform for creating, testing, and running reliable background jobs and workflows. So we're just going to start off talking about background jobs and workflows, right? Every application has them or will add them at some point, but we don't necessarily talk about the problems or the inefficiencies very often. So let's see. Yeah. So what are the problems? First, they're time-consuming and frustrating experience for software teams. You can lose hours to weeks in the process of creating and testing and then shipping these background functions or complex workflows. It overall, just at the bottom line, it ends up being a time suck for engineering teams. It diverts your focus from delivering that new product value for your customers, right? Just because you set up this infrastructure, or these queuing systems, or fine-tuned everything, your customer doesn't care. You need to be shipping new product value. So they're also notoriously painful to develop and test on your own machine. So how are you even going to start building? It's very tedious. You had to set up new systems. Maybe there's some tooling out there, but all of it's pretty lackluster. And running queues and workers in your local development environment is just not fun. And the feedback loop is always very slow. So, maybe you're using, test-driven development, which could be great, but what happens when you want to test your entire app end to end? You click something in the UI and you want that database, that background job to run and everything to process. TDD doesn't work for that. So you still need a good setup. So, as other people have talked, deploying to production can be tedious, right? Got to configure queues, dead letter queues. I need to make sure that my redrive policies are correct. I need to launch new worker services. Maybe I need to fine-tune polling or concurrency. Maybe I don't have any logs to start. I need to add logging and then figure out how to get value out of those logs. So with a lot of companies, there ends up being like a handoff to an infrastructure team or just an infrastructure engineer, and that consumes even more time, right? You have a handoff, you're bringing more people into the mix, and as we mentioned before, not every company has a big DevOps or infrastructure team. So, this is just, it's honestly, it's just pretty tedious affair. And bottom line, queues and event streams are fantastic tools, but they're low level. You still need to decide how your system will work with them or around them. And out of the box, they don't necessarily offer any support for complex workflows. You have to build all that yourself and decide how you're going to build that system. So at the end of the day, it's lots of valuable time spent on 0 to 1, right? And it's developer time wasted, and that's probably the worst spend that everyone has. That's the most valuable resource that developer teams have these days. So that's what we're solving. We're the developer platform for creating, testing, and running reliable background jobs and workflows, right? So how does ingest work? How are we helping developers with these problems? I'll just talk about how we work and how it's a little different. So let's say you already understand how background jobs all work. Usually there's a queue and a worker. We do something different here. So first, you define ingest functions in your existing code base, right? Use our SDK. You can see that on the right here. You don't need to look too closely, but there's some example code. And then you serve these functions via HTTP endpoint. So instead of having to run another service, basically open up an API for ingest to invoke these functions. So once your API is set up, you then trigger functions in your applications by just sending events. You run ingest send with our SDK, and things are off to the races. I'll get to that in just a second. And then after that event is received, we match up the event to your function, and we invoke your function. We manage retries, state, and more. So this is just what this enables, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. So there's no workers, no polling. It's super simple. So again, here's this like high-level fun diagram of like how ingest like a background job works. So it starts off with this event. Let's in this little example here, it's a sign up endpoint in your application, and we send this event, maybe user sign up. Flies over to ingest. We immediately record it for event history, so we can replay things later and do some really cool stuff with your logs of all events that we received. And then we process it and queue our jobs and execute the jobs by invoking via HTTP. So it just calls back to your same application. So you can even instrument things using a GraphQL plugin that you could find on the Guild's website to easily send these events. So really, you're just defining these functions in minimal code, and we just handle the rest for you. So another thing that this HTTP approach allows is that your jobs can run anywhere. I mean, your functions, can run anywhere. You can run on your existing infrastructure, wherever your application is running, right next to your API. Same machine, same service, serverless, not serverless, doesn't matter. So, this also allows you to configure, if it's just HTTP, it can run on serverless functions. It can run on long-running servers. They can even run on edge functions. So if you had a special use case and you wanted to reduce cold boots, but you wanted to be able to have bursts, if you want to use edge, it doesn't matter. You can use that too. We run anywhere. And the last benefit is you don't have to change your process. You don't need to adopt something else. You just keep your CI/CD process. So now that you know how ingest works, let me just do a quick run through of the ingest stack and how our tools help you ship faster. Starting off, this is the ingest dev server. This is a complete local development experience that runs on your machine with one command. So you don't need to run any other dependencies. There's no other services that you need to orchestrate. Just a fully self-contained development environment for background jobs and workflows. Gives you immediate feedback through a web UI, so you can see what's happening in these asynchronous processes behind the scene better than I think anything else that you've been able to see before. And you can retry jobs, and improves the developer feedback loop in local development. So you're speeding up that initial getting started flow. And then there's our SDK. And our SDK, I want to definitely call out, it works with Redwood right out of the box. It's easy to define background jobs and workflows. And at the top of the session, going way back, David talked about how Redwood helps minimize boilerplate and it helps reduce that for building applications. We couldn't agree more. And with our SDK, you can write those jobs without the boilerplate. And the simple primitives that you have, you can build simple things like what we see right here, a simple background job that sends a welcome email and then maybe adds a user to a CRM, or you can do more complex things. And each step here that you see is automatically retried. So you can make sure that your code is reliable and you don't have to worry about jobs getting lost or things failing intermittently because of a third-party API is down. So here's just another quick example about running things in parallel. So you can easily parallelize workloads. And if any one of those parallelized steps fails, we'll retry just that bit so that you don't need to start the job from the beginning. So it allows you to be super productive and run reliable background jobs and workflows. And here's a little buzzy thing for you. We also can solve some problems of chaining LLM calls. So sometimes these calls take a long time. Sometimes you want to take the output of an LLM and pipe it into something else. With Ingest, that's super easy. We're all steps. We're workflow orchestration. It's all done for you. It's easy to do. And lastly, this piece of the Ingest stack is the Ingest platform. This is the fully managed platform that replaces any legacy queues and workers. Everything is handled for you. Managing concurrency, rate limiting, backoffs, scheduling, job cancellation. And you get metrics out of the box. Logs are included, and you can jump right through them and find exactly where your failures are so you can fix them quickly. So there's no need to manage queues and workers anymore and try to find insight. It's taken care of you, and every developer on your team can have access to this amazing insight. And just a little quick thing here with Redwood, you can get started with one command, just this little thing. In seconds, you'll have an ingest function set up. Thanks to some of the Redwood core maintainers that helped hack on this and work with us on this. So that's a wrap. Thanks for letting me talk to you about ingest, and hopefully you're intrigued.
Very intrigued. Thanks, Dan. It's been a pleasure to see the community take hold of ingest. And since we're at the end here and a little over time, what I'm going to do is bring up everyone who's here. We'll bring up our panelists. And also, those of you who've been here before. So Mina, Lauren, and Zachary, I see you're still on. Join us if you can. But I just wanted to do a little closeout. So panelists, kind of your last opportunity here to give some thoughts. So it could be to Dan as well. But do you have some highlights from today? And also, I know we don't play favorites, but if you had a favorite, go ahead, and you're welcome to mention that as well. So anyone want to jump in? Robin, I'm looking at you in the middle of my screen.
Sure. Well, first off, Dan, I thought what you showed was great. I really appreciated the the traceability of the event-driven flow. I think that's a thing that can struggle in certain implementations where it's too hard to know how different events are chaining, especially if they're in parallel and all that. So I thought that was great. In terms of favorites, I mean, honorable mention to everybody. Everybody had great products, and it's that kind of exciting position of everything looks fun to go play around with, which is both inspiring and frightening as a founder. But if I had to pick one, I think I would pick Hive by the Guild as just everybody. It seems like everybody could use it, and it's just straightforward benefit. But yeah, once again, honorable mention to everybody. It was all tremendous.
All right, very good. Amy, what do you think?
Oh man, I just look at the landscape right now and get so excited about all the opportunities and the ways that we can build things that weren't available even 5 years ago. So just appreciate everybody that was able to participate. If I did have to say a favorite, I feel like it's naming my favorite child. I would probably say Stripe just because they're the ones that send me money. That's how I collect my money. So, but that's nothing against anybody else.
Where is Paul? Where's Paul?
I know.
All right. And Elena, how about you? Thank you again for joining us today.
I think highlight for me is just seeing how easy all of these tools were to set up. Like specifically, even for Redwood, having like a one-line command to get set up is really important. The one thing that I would like say to all of the founders is, especially for myself, who is like a developer who's not good at figuring things out, it's oftentimes easy to get started and then like really hard to get things like figure out what's broken, or like keep going down an onboarding path and not really know what is wrong. And so seems like you all have like the first part covered, which is like get people started. I would encourage you to focus on like minimize the surface area for people getting lost and make it really easy for them to like get help if they need help. Because that's like most of 9 out of 10 times when I'm trying something new, after 5 minutes, if like I can't figure it out, then I'm on to something new. So that's the kind of broad piece of advice.
Thank you. So bringing it to a close here, one of our mantras in the RedwoodJS community is by helping others be successful with Redwood. That's how we make the project successful. And Dan, Zachary, Lauren, Mina, Paul, like building things is really fun. It can be so hard. But getting to do it with all of you and all the work you put into making Redwood better, I just can't thank you enough. You put in time today, and it's really a pleasure to get to show what you're building to the community at large. We're going to post these videos more and get more eyes on them, because what you're building is helping make Redwood projects better and provide a better experience for the devs. So thank you once again. And it's just really fun to get to do this with all of you. So I think that's a wrap. Well, thank you for kicking this off. Next month, we're going to do this again. We'll have 5 more partner pitches, and I'm excited to introduce you to yet more people that are making this ecosystem and the RedwoodJS project and community even better. So thank you all. Truly a pleasure. Amy, what do I do? How do I sign off? I don't know what to do now.
Do you want me to hit the end broadcast?
Hit the end broadcast button.
Okay.
So very good. Thank you all.